On December 17, 2025, Jack Smith, the former special counsel whose name had become synonymous with high-stakes investigations, arrived at Congress to testify about his work on the Trump cases. The air was thick with anticipation as Smith, flanked by aides, made his way through the marble corridors, past a gauntlet of flashing cameras and reporters eager for a statement. This was not just another hearing. This was a moment the nation had been waiting for, a chance to hear directly from the man who had spent years investigating a former president. For the first time, Smith would speak directly to lawmakers about the two major cases he built, cases that had dominated headlines, fueled endless debate, and divided the nation along political lines. The hearing room was packed, every seat filled, as members of Congress prepared to question him on the details that had remained hidden from public view. Until now, the public had seen only court filings, press conferences, and leaks. Now, Smith would put his account on the official record, offering a comprehensive narrative of his investigations and the evidence he had gathered. His testimony wasn't about changing legal outcomes, but about historical accountability. Smith understood that the legal process had run its course, but the story of what happened, and why, still needed to be told. After Trump's 2024 election victory, federal cases against him were dismissed, leaving many questions unanswered and a sense of unfinished business in the justice system. The headlines had moved on, but the issues at stake remained unresolved for millions of Americans. Smith's appearance was a rare opportunity to fill in the blanks, defend his work, and respond to accusations of political motivation that had dogged him from the start. He faced tough questions from both supporters and critics, determined to set the record straight. He was there not as a prosecutor seeking conviction, but as a public servant providing a detailed account of his findings. Smith's role had shifted, from investigator to witness, from prosecutor to historian, tasked with explaining the facts as he saw them. Under oath, Smith would explain why he believed he had proof beyond a reasonable doubt that a former president committed serious federal crimes. He would walk lawmakers through the evidence, the legal reasoning, and the obstacles his team faced along the way. This testimony was a formal counter-narrative to years of political rhetoric, misinformation, and speculation. It was a chance to clarify the record and offer transparency in a process that had often seemed opaque. It was a final, detailed statement from the man at the center of the storm, delivered for history to judge. As Smith left the hearing room, the weight of his words lingered, echoing through the halls of Congress and across the nation. The moment was set to become a permanent part of the nation's record, a chapter in American history that would be studied, debated, and remembered for years to come. Jack Smith didn't volunteer to testify. He was subpoenaed by a Republican-led committee investigating alleged political bias in federal law enforcement. The stakes were high and the atmosphere was tense from the very beginning. Smith, a seasoned prosecutor, found himself at the center of a political storm, summoned not for his willingness, but because the committee demanded answers. The committee saw Smith's investigations as prime examples of weaponization against Trump, now the sitting president. For them, Smith's work symbolized what they believed was a broader pattern of federal agencies being used for political ends. The hearing was as much about sending a message as it was about uncovering facts. Smith had offered to testify publicly, but the committee insisted on a closed-door session, controlling what would be released. By keeping the proceedings private, they could manage the narrative, deciding which details would reach the public and which would remain hidden behind those heavy doors. This secrecy allowed selective leaks, shaping public perception more than seeking truth. Reporters camped outside, hungry for any scrap of information, while inside, the real story unfolded away from cameras and microphones. Despite the private setting, Smith answered every question, refusing to invoke the Fifth Amendment. He was determined to be transparent, even if the process itself was anything but. He saw this as a chance to present a fact-based rebuttal to years of witch hunt accusations. For Smith, this was more than just a legal obligation. It was an opportunity to set the record straight, to counter the narrative that had dogged him for so long. The committee aimed to put Smith on the defensive, hoping to extract statements supporting their claims. Their questions were pointed, sometimes aggressive, designed to trip him up or catch him in contradiction. Smith, in turn, wanted the evidence on the record, not lost to partisan noise. He meticulously referenced documents and facts, determined that the truth would not be drowned out by political theater. The battle for public opinion would play out through leaks and summaries. Every detail that emerged was scrutinized, spun, and debated in the media, fueling a national conversation that extended far beyond the committee room. Smith was determined his sworn testimony would stand as a powerful part of the historical narrative. He knew that, in the end, the official record would outlast the headlines and the political maneuvering. The stakes were political, but the record would be permanent. Every word spoken, every answer given, would be preserved for future generations to judge. Even behind closed doors, Smith's words would echo far beyond the committee room. The impact of his testimony would ripple through history, shaping how this moment, and his role in it, would ultimately be remembered. Smith's testimony focused on the effort to overturn the 2020 election. He told the committee the evidence showed Trump knew he lost, yet orchestrated a deliberate scheme to remain in power. Trump's own advisors, attorney general and campaign staff told him there was no fraud. He ignored them. Smith described a coordinated effort pressuring state officials, pushing fake electors, and subverting the certification on January 6th. The evidence, from aides' testimony to internal communications, painted a picture of knowing deception, not a legitimate dispute. Smith's account directly challenged the narrative that Trump simply believed the election was stolen. Smith then addressed the classified documents case at Mar-a-Lago. He said the evidence for obstruction was even stronger than in the election case. Smith described Trump personally directing the movement of boxes to hide them from his own attorney, defying a federal subpoena. He testified that Trump encouraged his lawyer to falsely certify all documents were returned. These actions, Smith argued, showed a clear intent to obstruct justice and deceive investigators. The testimony left no doubt about the gravity of the allegations and the risk to national security. Smith introduced the concept of affinity fraud to describe Trump's relationship with his supporters. This term, usually reserved for financial schemes, refers to when someone exploits the trust and shared identity of a group to manipulate them for personal benefit. In this case, Smith argued that Trump's connection with his base went far beyond typical political loyalty. Traditionally used in financial crimes, Smith argued Trump exploited the trust of his base, not for money, but to convince them to help overturn the election. He suggested that Trump's influence was so powerful because it was rooted in shared beliefs, values, and a sense of belonging, making his supporters more vulnerable to manipulation. Trump weaponized loyalty, misleading followers with false claims and encouraging them to take risky actions, like protesting on January 6th or serving as fake electors. Many of these individuals believed they were defending democracy, not realizing they were being used as pawns in a larger scheme. Many believed they were acting as patriots, but Smith said they were victims of calculated deception. Their deep trust in Trump made them susceptible to his narrative, blinding them to the legal and ethical dangers of their actions. Trump insulated himself while his supporters faced legal consequences. While he remained protected, many of his most loyal followers found themselves under investigation, arrested, or even imprisoned for their roles. Smith's framing painted Trump as a leader who betrayed his most loyal followers for personal gain. The prosecution argued that he prioritized his own interests, disregarding the harm inflicted on those who trusted him most. The idea of affinity fraud added moral weight to the legal arguments. It wasn't just about breaking the law, it was about violating the trust of a community and turning that trust into a weapon. It suggested a profound breach of responsibility, transforming loyalty into a tool for a criminal plot. Smith's use of the term affinity fraud reframed the case, highlighting the emotional and ethical costs of Trump's actions and underscoring the lasting damage done to his supporters and the nation. Trump's response to Smith's testimony was immediate and combative. On social media, he dismissed the hearing as another witch hunt, attacking Smith personally rather than addressing the evidence. Trump labeled Smith a partisan operative, urging supporters to reject everything he said. This strategy, attacking the messenger, has long been Trump's hallmark, reinforcing his bond with his base. His allies in Congress and media echoed his claims, calling the hearing a smear campaign. The result: two separate realities, one where Smith laid out a powerful case, another where he was seen as a partisan hitman. The evidence was drowned out by political outrage. The divide between fact and narrative only deepened. Smith's testimony had no legal consequences. The cases against Trump were dismissed after his 2024 election win. DOJ policy shielded sitting presidents from prosecution, ending the cases Smith built. Smith wasn't presenting evidence to a jury, but to Congress, under oath, for the historical record. The legal chapter was closed. The political system had sidelined the courts. This left unresolved allegations and a sense of unfinished business. Smith's testimony became an act of historical, not legal, significance. He aimed to ensure the evidence wouldn't be erased or forgotten. It was a final, formal statement for the record. History's judgment would be the only one left. Smith's testimony was written for the history books, a sworn account for future generations. In a world of contested facts, his words created a permanent record, countering years of witch hunt accusations. Without a trial, Smith's testimony became the foundation for an alternative understanding of events. It ensured future debates wouldn't be one-sided. This entire scenario is fictional, but it explores real questions about accountability and the limits of justice. It asks what happens when a president is accused of crimes but cannot be tried. Smith's words, even in fiction, underscore that accountability can take many forms. Legal consequences were off the table, but historical accountability was not. The testimony stands as a symbol. Even when courtrooms close, the truth and the record endure.